Hello, everyone. I'm Dave Rubenstein, Editor-in-Chief of SD Times, and I would like to welcome you to today's program, New Year's Resolutions, Simplify Your Testing in 2019. You know, it's the time of year when we all decide that we'll waste less time, or we'll get along better with others, or we'll work smarter. So today's webinar, during which we'll hear from Tricentis Director of Product, Ryan Yackel, the webinar will provide some ways for you to simplify your testing and become a more effective tester in 2019. So before we get started, I have a couple of brief announcements. Today's session will be followed by a live Q&A, but you can submit your questions at any time during the program by finding the Questions tab in your control panel, typing in your question, and hitting Submit, of course, and we'll get to as many as time will allow. Secondly, the webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand on the sdtimes.com website in the next day or so. So to get us started and to tell us about some testing resolutions we'd be wise not to break, here's Ryan Yackel. Ryan?
Hey everyone, thank you so much for that great introduction. I appreciate you all having me on the phone or /webinar today to talk to you about some New Year's resolutions we've come up with you all for 2019, especially around your testing strategy. Let's go ahead and get started here. So a lot of people like to figure out who I am. Don't Google me, bad things will come up. I'm just kidding. If you look for kind of me online, you'll probably see a lot of pictures of my kids and my love for coffee, but I am Ryan Yackel. I'm one of the directors over here at Tricentis. And prior to coming to Tricentis, I was at a company called QA Symphony, and we merged recently. I'll talk a little bit about that. But just to kind of understand kind of some testing experience I bring to the table is that some of the things we'll talk about today, I'll try to bring in some of these experiences and show you kind of where I've seen those at the past companies. But at CGI Group, I was a test automation engineer. And then also at Macy's Systems and Technology, I was enterprise test lead. So kind of span the gamut when it comes to consulting and also being in an IT organization and having a lot of problems that you see today around testing and solving those problems. And then lastly, of course, I love superheroes and specialty coffee. So if you're ever in Atlanta, go ahead and hit me up. I'll take you to a coffee shop over here in Atlanta. Real quick about Tricentis, we are the continuous testing company, and we're also the leader in Agile test management and also specialize in advanced test automation. And one of our big claims is we really support over 150 different technologies. So from web all the way to your SAP applications, we really kind of specialize in testing those end-to-end test scenarios. And really, there's really nothing that we can't test. Just real quick, and we'll get kind of past this, but we've experienced a ton of growth from 2007 all the way to 2018. So we were founded in 2007, but as you can see here, with a lot of funding, a lot of backing, we've acquired a load testing solution, a test data solution, and then also we just merged with my previous company, which was QA Symphony. So very exciting times here, and also just an exciting year for us as well is just the number of growth we have with our customers, and also just the ability to make the analyst recognition every year for the past 4 years has been a really great time, really fun time for us. Another thing I just want to highlight here is we have a user conference coming out, and that's in May of this year, May 22nd and 23rd. It's actually going to be in San Francisco. So if you're out there in the Bay Area or you've got time to head off to a testing event, be sure to come out to Accelerate 2019. We're going to have 2 of these. One's going to be in San Francisco, and one's going to be in Vienna this year. And lastly, we're going to be sending you all some calculators to play with. Everybody likes calculators. I'm back in my day when I had the TI-83 calculator when I was in middle school, and being able to figure out ways to hack that calculator and play games on it while I was in math class. But these calculators are actually going to be really helpful for you as you get these. And we've got about 12 or so different calculators, but what we're going to be talking about today is one of the areas is really figuring out how to optimize your test suite, how to optimize what you're actually going to be putting into your test automation strategies. And these calculators help you figure out things like test flow, risk coverage. They're really, really cool tools to help you figure that out. So definitely check those out as we send follow-up email to you. Okay, so everybody's New Year's resolution. I don't know about you all, but if you go more than 1 or 2, you're not going to get those usually done. Every single person, I think, that has a New Year's resolution, they usually don't complete it, I think, and they fail within the first like 2 weeks or 3 weeks, something like that. Well, we're giving you 4. So let's see if you actually get any of these done. But these are our top 4. So if you go through today and you say, you know what, Ryan, I really only care about one of these. Focus on that, and don't get overloaded. But we got 4 options here for you to figure out how you're going to optimize your testing strategies for 2019. And we got a poll for you. So we're going to actually do the poll right now, and based off of what we just said, those 4 options, select the one that you think you're going to be able to really gear towards for 2019. And think long and hard about this, because you've only got, I know we can select more than one, but you really only got one thing to really focus on possibly this year if you really want to get this done. And if you get that thing done, then you can move on to the next thing, and you can actually be a lot better than a lot of the people out there that fail their resolutions from the first 2 weeks or so. Okay, so I think we're getting some panel stuff coming in here. Let's go ahead and take a look here. All right, so let's go ahead and show some of these results. Okay, so some of the results we have so far. We've got a good even. Well, this is kind of funny. So one of them, nobody is saying that they want to get along better with others. This is surprising, so we'll talk about that when we get later in the webinar today. And then we also got a kind of a tie for getting organized and making smarter decisions. So we'll talk about all 4 of these today, but very interesting that nobody wants to get along better with others. Maybe there's some disgruntled testers or developers in the group today on the webinar that just don't want to get over each other and want to keep fighting. I don't know. We'll talk about that as we move along in the webinar. Okay, let's get to it. So the first one is stop wasting time. Stop wasting time. We've got 3 things we're going to look at, then we're going to talk about, how can you focus your attention to even stop wasting time even more. But the first 2 things we're going to talk about really revolves around the traps of test script maintenance. Everyone that's done test automation is probably got to the point where they've gone, oh, geez, I don't really know how to contain all this script maintenance I have. Second one is improving your test data management. I'll give you some data around that and how we can better look to optimize our test data management strategies. And then having a better UAT experience with some simplified documentation. The first one we get into is really this test script maintenance. And this really happens, if everyone's kind of been on the same page here, this happens when a lot of us get to a point where we're saying we want to finish our test automation either in sprint or in a certain time frame, and we time box ourselves to get those things done. And when we get done, we think, you know what, we're actually not really so done that we thought. And if you can imagine, if all those different squares that you're seeing there are test automation, only the yellow ones that I'm highlighting are ones that are actually reliable. All the rest of them are experiencing or start to experience what we're calling the test maintenance trap. And what we mean by that is when you figure out how to do your test automation, what usually happens is after you have a script running, maybe it's run multiple times, as your application changes, as your code changes, what then happens is you have all this trash that follows you behind you, because the trash ends up being all the work and all the time and effort you're going to have to do to actually maintain this test script. And again, as you move to different applications, it can get harder and harder and harder. So one is you need to figure out how to avoid this test script maintenance trap. And what we've done is we've kind of put together an example way to figure out how or when you're going to be able to either keep using certain tools or shift your focus and your strategy to something else that may be better for your test script maintenance. When you look at kind of an enterprise continuum of what goes on in your organization, you've got things like new apps, which are web, mobile, front-end applications. Then you've got a lot of your existing applications, which are ERP, more internal, SAP, these types of things, right? That's kind of the architecture that's there. But as you keep going up the scale in this diagram here, you're also seeing different methodologies. You're also seeing different levels of automation that are going on, and you're also seeing different people that are a part of that, that are actually a part of doing the actual testing. So when it comes to a methodology standpoint, you've got teams on the left side. They're doing a lot of more Scrum-based kind of team-oriented. On the right side, they still may be kind of this team-oriented. Maybe you've got more COEs and more kind of centralized teams doing their testing. On the left side, you've got a lot of automation that's going on that's built out with open source, which is really good. You got a lot of script-based testing that's going on there. And what's going on is maybe you're testing, maybe using Selenium or Appium or these open source tools, and they're running perfectly for you. Maybe you even built out a framework like using TestNG or using JUnit to really drive all these, and that's working really, really well. However, you may get to a point where you're starting to say, you know what, when I get to scaling this automation, I may be able to kind of take control of this maintenance chasm they may have. But even when I cross over into commercial tools, I may be getting into a hairy issue here. And what we mean by that is when the script maintenance part comes into play, it's not just about, hey, do I have the technical skills to actually maintain all these scripts going forward? We work with a lot of teams that do that. Dolby Labs is an example of one of our customers that does that, and is full-blown open source automation. But a lot of times what they're doing is they're simply testing, or not simply, they're really testing more of their front-end applications, more lightweight applications. So they're not really going full end-to-end test scenarios where they have to cross different tools, cross different areas, where they may be having to do a full business transaction. So when you're thinking about how to avoid the test script maintenance, you need to be factoring in kind of all 4 of these rows here and trying to figure out where you might be hitting into a gap and where you may be thinking that's going to be coming soon. If you have a rollout of a new ERP upgrade maybe coming in the middle of the year this year, and you've primarily been kind of in control of testing your automation, front-end automation purely with open source, that may not be working for the new application you have to test. And if you're doing a lot of integration with those 2 systems, you may need to be looking for different solutions. So that's the first one I was looking for. Not only stop wasting time when it comes to the maintenance of your script, but also not wasting time in thinking you can solve everything with just one approach. The next part of stop wasting time really does deal with test data management. This is a new report that came out by WePro. This is the 2018 State of Quality Report. I know there's lots of quality reports out there. This is a really good report. I highly encourage you all to download. But what you notice is that the test data management portion, which is extremely time-sucking when it comes to testing, is still a pretty big bottleneck when it comes to, if you look at kind of the industry standards out there. And if you look at the growth from 2016 to 17, then 17 to 18, we really haven't grown a whole lot. One of the interesting things that you're seeing here is that down below there, in the middle there, it says in-house automation scripts that are used to create their data, using automated scripts to actually create data that you have. The other tools that they have are people are actually using test data management tools and generation tools, whether it's production or synthetic data. You see that kind of getting a little bit better, but it's still not getting to a point where you're able to create data on demand, create data in the fly, and reuse those in your test suites. I'm not saying this is an easy task, but if you can solve the task of improving your test data management, you're going to have this unforeseen bottleneck go away, because what you don't want to have is all this automation built up, and then at the very end you say, well, actually, we only have enough data to run this through one time or twice, right? When you have all these different test scenarios to look out for. So be on the lookout for that unforeseen bottleneck, and make sure you're improving your test data management strategy, whether you're looking at tying that into your kind of custom built solutions, or looking at kind of a vendor to help with that. The last one is BetterUAT with Simplified Documentation. I don't know if you all kind of seen the new new thing that came out just about 6 days ago, but Microsoft has said that there was 11,000 people that got wrapped up in this reply all email chain. And I just went and Googled kind of reply all, I think I typed in reply all hell actually, or reply all disaster. And I came up with all these other ones as well. 1.2 million NSH employees got locked into an email chain. 500 journalists get stuck in reply all. 25,000 stuck in it's insane when this happens. If anyone's had this happen to you, it's funny at the very beginning, but then it rapidly turns into a very, very poor experience working at the company that you're at. And I say all this to say that this is typically what happens during UAT. How many times you have a tester and you're on a test team, you're in a Scrum environment, and you have to involve UAT users that are maybe not testers by trade, they're more non-technical, and what they're going to have to do is jump in and actually validate a lot of stuff before it goes out into production. This could be again, product owners, product managers, could be business analysts, could be people that are actually a part of the business, right? If they don't have a better way to simplify the documentation that they're giving to you, what's going to happen is you're all going to get wrapped up in this reply all email chain where it's going to be never ending loop of how'd you find this bug? Where did you get it? I don't know. Can you show me a screenshot? Where'd it go? How did you get there? I have no idea what system you're using. Like all these things going on and on and on and on and on. And this same thing can happen even if you have a ticketing system like Jira or ServiceNow or something like that, right? So the better way to do that would be to look into screen capturing solutions where you're able to give to these UAT users, hey, listen, we're going to make this very simple for you. You turn this thing on, you go off, you document your results, you just test like a user, go off and do that, and then when you report back what's going on, we know exactly the path to where you got to. So stop wasting time when it comes to being able to say, you know what, get rid of the reply all email chain and actually look at some tools that can help you, and not just help you, but help your UAT users with the ability to give you rapid feedback through documentation. The next thing when we talk about stop wasting time is really about focusing on what's important. And this is really getting to cutting through the jargon that's a part of your culture or even a part of your team. One of the biggest things that I hate, when I am talking to somebody is they say very jargon-esque things and there's no clarity, or they might as well have just told me absolutely nothing after I get done talking with them. Not being clear, not telling me what they need from me. It's really, really hard for me to help that person with a path to being able to solve their problem. And this also happens in our own space. When it comes to, for example, this quote here from Gartner, even though I love Gartner and I love all the stuff they're doing and all the other analysts that are out there, they've got a glossary of terms, and this is how they describe digital business transformation. This is pretty interesting. It just says, digital business transformation is the process of exploiting digital technologies and supporting capabilities to create a robust digital business model. I'm not saying that's not an inaccurate statement. However, when you're talking to your team about our overall initiative to go digital or get into the digital transformation or optimization phrase that you're in, what impact does that really have on your test strategy for Agile and DevOps, right? Where do you all need to focus on that, right? Because if you get into saying and just talking through the jargon, you're never going to get clarity around what that actually means. And so, for example, when we talk about Agile, when we talk about DevOps as it relates back to a digital business transformation goal, a lot of times when we talk about that and how that impacts testing, really in 4 areas for both things. The first one is, when we think about Agile, we think about it being on one team and one approach. This is where real-time collaboration comes in, right? So when we talk about being digital, you're talking about being digital across omni-channel to all your customers. We're also talking about being one team and having that real-time collaboration even with your software development teams. When we're talking about being able to create stuff fast and get feedback back to the business stakeholders, we're not looking at these big, lengthy requirement documents. We're looking at how to use centralized tools and get them into a documentation that everyone is available with and understands. A lot of teams nowadays are doing things like behavior-driven development, or they're using things like specification by example. It's a great way to kind of get rid of that idea of a requirements document. When it comes to the other area, which is faster and quicker releases, what we're looking at is automating a lot of boring and repetitive tasks, right? What we don't want to, and we talked about using open source to drive a lot of your test automation. This even gets into things like, how can we speed up the repetitive tasks that we're doing in test planning, test scheduling, and test execution, getting rid of all this boring stuff so we can actually focus on the things we want to get done. And the last one is really losing touch with reality. This is the big thing that teams struggle with, which is a lot of teams like to say, who owns the quality of what's going on in our organization nowadays? When we talk about, and when I talk to teams that say, yeah, we're Agile, everyone owns quality, everyone owns kind of what goes on with the product from soup to nuts, right? However, somebody has to own the actual quality of it. As testers, we should take pride in not looking and saying, oh yeah, well, the developer also owns quality, and the product manager, and the QA person, and well, of course they do, right? We know that, right? We understand what we're trying to say philosophically there, right? But when it comes down to it, who actually owns quality? How do you inject different testing methods in your Agile environment? How do you get load testing and security testing a part of your Scrum team? That falls back to us and falls back to our part of our strategy. So we need to focus more on those parts of our strategy here. The next part of DevOps is, when it comes to digital, is you can look at it like this, right? When we think about machines and tests, what we're really looking at is, how can we make our test automation run on these test machines like it's exactly like production and ready to go? We've got customers right now that spin up environments, run their test automation results instantly, tear down the machine, and report back to us, report back centrally, so you know exactly what test automation has occurred. Even quicker release cycles, we talked about this as well, but making sure testing is not the #1 bottleneck. This backs into what we talked about earlier, which is if test data management is a bottleneck and you're not fixing that, how are you going to actually get the release out on time? Using different testing types. Test environment setup, I won't go into a lot of this, but when we think about the DevOps side to the impact of testing, it really looks at how can we spin up these test environments very, very quickly. And then the last one is just making sure we have visibility into all the things that are going on that are moving so fast. There's lots of examples of this on our website, but lots of examples of customers that are extremely CI and CD kind of focused. Dolby Labs is an example, as I mentioned this earlier, but they were doing so much automation, they had no idea what was actually going on. And so, you know, looking at ways to pull in your automation and understand what's going on is key. The last part of focusing on what's important is aligning testing important to what the business needs. And I'm not going to get super into this, but one of the big things that we are very passionate about sometimes when it comes to testing is how much testing can we do rather than what testing should we actually accomplish. And what I mean by that is when we think about all the different testing that goes on in our organization, we have to really make sure that we are highlighting the high risk, medium risk, and low risk areas of our application and make sure that we have 80% business coverage around all those high risks of our test cases. And the reason why I'm saying that may sound very simple. It's like, yeah, Ryan, of course, you need to do that. But how many times have you gone through and figured out, wow, why are we running this test? Why are we doing this test? If we were to run this test, or if we were not to run this test, what's the impact to our business? Rather than, what are the other 5 tests we haven't run before? Maybe they're higher risk than the other low-hanging fruit that we can actually run and get fast results back from. So key thing here is just to focus on the things that are important to your business, and that refers really back to risk and being able to tie that back in. The next one is getting organized. So who has seen Marie Kondo? I know a lot of people are really pumped out about this woman who's on Netflix. I've watched some of her stuff, and she's really cool. She's really awesome. She's kind of reminds me of another show that came out, and it was called Minimalism. It was also on Netflix. So there's 2 shows for you to go watch if you're ever thinking about getting organized. But one of the things that both of these shows kind of talk about is really figuring out the things that you need that bring you joy and the things that you don't need that don't bring you joy. And I'm going to get into this in a minute, but when we think about our testing, right, we've got a ton of test automation that's going on. Are those tests necessary? Are they not necessary? Are they super expensive to run, or can we get by with not running those tests every single release? Or can we get faster feedback when it comes to exploratory testing? So the big thing that I've heard from a lot of customers is that people like doing exploratory testing because it gets rid of a lot of the tests that you have to do. Well, that's not actually true, right? When you think about a test or a test case, that shouldn't be really confused with tests. This is Ingo Phillip. This is one of our DevOps evangelists over here at Tricentis. He got a lot of this inspiration from a guy I think everyone knows, Michael Bolton. But one of the things he likes to talk about is, like, think about all the tests that you have. It's not that these tests are bad. It's just that, are these tests necessary? And also, at the very end of it, the bottom line is these test cases should not be confused with actual tests. And what we mean by that is you have a ton of tests that are going on. Some of these tests give you value feedback, and some of them do not give you any feedback at all that's very necessary for you to figure out the health of your application, right? The other thing that tests do is that they're built in for regression a lot of times, and this is really good for a release readiness standpoint and making sure that we're good to go. But at the end of the day, if we run these regression tests over and over and over again, what are the other areas of the test or the application that we haven't tested that could be used as exploratory tests or as ways to investigate the application that maybe automation has never covered before? So always keep that in mind when you're going through and thinking, these test cases that you have, they need to be looked at as a lens of something that either sparks joy in you from an actual from an actual tester perspective, and that may sound a little bit weird, but also things that maybe doesn't spark joy. And so things that don't spark joy, in my opinion, are things like flaky tests that are unreliable, duplicate test scenarios. Like, why would I have a test case that has the same steps or the same data or the same environment multiple times and not knowing that they were duplicate tests, right? Why am I running all these low-risk manual tests? I mean, that brings me no joy. If I were to go run a lot of manual tests that give me no feedback into the health of my application, then why would I even run these? Running them just to say that they pass isn't a good way to go about kind of organizing your test strategy. And then tests that never run. Why would I run tests that never run? I know that I was talking with a gentleman the other day, and he was from a large auto manufacturer, and he was saying that he basically came in to help out his test automation team, because what was happening was the previous person before him had built out this entire automated test suite and built out this entire automated test library. And what would happen was they only ran a certain subset of those tests. And so what was happening was he realized is that, and that person was no longer there after he kind of took over, what he realized was that he was creating all of these tests just to say he created tests, not tests that were actually testing the application. So things that would spark joy, and this is where he kind of inverted this, was he looked at key process validations that they need to go through. He looked at how can I build in more resilient automation with a framework on top of it. They were actually using Cucumber at the time, and he built that out. And then what's the level of high-risk manual and automated tests I need to focus on? If I can catch things before they go into production, and I can have confidence that actually I am going to give value to the business by making sure the most risky areas of our application are stable before they go, that gives me joy, and that makes me happy a part of my job. So take all the stuff that really doesn't spark joy, throw it in the test bin. I said it was called the trash bin. I changed it to test bin. I thought that was pretty clever. Throw it in the test bin. Okay, real quick, this is a quick customer case study I just want to highlight, and this could be something that's probably in your wheelhouse right now. At the time, they had 11 testers. Coverage of their business risk really wasn't there. Their execution time was about 10 weeks, and they had over almost 5,000 manual tests they had. What we had was taking the ability and saying, you know what we can do? We're going to look through all the tests, reduce that redundancy back to around 1,100. So getting back to what we do with Marie Kondo, looking at those things that don't give us joy, kicking out all the redundancy of the tests that we have, and take those 1,100 tests and build in, out of these 1,100 tests, they really cover 89% of our business risk. We're going to reduce the execution down from 10 to 5 by really focusing on test data management. We talked about that a little bit earlier, being able to built in your test data, part of your test automation strategy. And the last part was looking at how can we get a lot of these tests to a, not near 100%, but close to the 80 to 90% percentile. And we were able to do that with 92% of that. So if you look at kind of all the different areas that we're looking at ways to take all the bloat that you have, look at the tests that are really important, figure out ways to either automate those or convert those into high performance, high risk business test cases. So at the end of the day, you really have a huge reduction in the actual critical defects that are found. This is just a quick customer use case that we did, but again, looking at ways to tidy up is a way to do that. Second one for getting organized is learning to let go while you bring structure to your test automation chaos. And you do this through two ways. You empower teams to make decisions, and you offer help to orchestrate execution across tools. The first one is this, learn to let go. Everyone loves being a leader, but a lot of people, a lot of times, they do not like to delegate big decisions. That's the thing I have a hard time dealing with. I like to do a lot of things myself, and I like to take ownership over a lot of things. But one of the things you need to do is figure out ways to empower your team to make big decisions. And one of the big decisions that they're going to be making, this is great insight from some Steve Jobs, always have this kind of in the back of your head. But when it comes to the big decision, he's really talking about is this, like technology really is nothing, right? What's important is you have faith in people. They're basically good and smart. And if you give them tools to do wonderful things with them. When it comes to test automation and it comes to testing strategies, a lot of times we have this analysis of paralysis. Got that right the fifth time I said it. analysis of paralysis when it comes to figuring out a tool or a collection of tools to use when you go down your test automation strategy. And what you need to be doing is first being educated on, the deal is this, everyone, test automation landscape is getting more and more complex. And don't freak out, it's not that big of a deal. And it's actually helpful if you can embrace this type of little bit of heterogeneous nature that goes on inside of your test automation landscape. Because the thing is this, open source tools are doing very well, but also commercial tools play a part. And you shouldn't be weary about allowing your teams to figure out the best tool that's going to work for them in that circumstance. We talked about at the very beginning that, some teams that are on smaller agile teams, testing web, mobile, really kind of these microservices type transactions really are geared towards open source, right? And that's all well and good. They have no problems with that, and they're able to scale that very well. When it comes to tools that are needing to do more end-to-end test scenarios, they're interacting with things that open source cannot do or is just not optimized to do, you should be allowing that team to use the best tool that they have for their team. And the way this is also backed into, one of our customer stories, is that you empower the teams to make big decisions, which could be selecting a tool, a language of doing automation. But the other part is offering tool choice while maintaining control. And what we mean by that is this. This is from Brian Osterkamp. He's one of the, I think he's a test automation architect over at USAA. He came and spoke at our user conference last year. And he gave a whole presentation on, and I would love you to check out this presentation. He gave this whole presentation on this same thing that we just talked about, and turning over a new leaf in the new year of saying, listen, we're going to help and enable our teams to be successful in automation. And the way we're going to do it is by building out this automation freeway or highway. And what they did was they said, listen, here are all the tools on the side that we support. We're going to help you, and we're going to get you set up. We're going to give you tutorials. We're going to make sure you're successful in your automation. However, if you want to do using other testing solutions, that's okay, but you're going to lose a little bit of the support from my team. But the thing was this, is that they were giving the option to be successful and ready with the support of their team, or also to be successful and experimental at the same time by choosing other testing tools. And what would happen is if that other team went off and used other testing solutions, they could bring it back to the architecture team and say, hey, you know what? I really think that we should look at rolling out the support for this across the automation freeway. Would you be willing to kind of do an audit of this? And he was more than willing to do that. So it was giving creativity, not throwing people down under the bus and saying, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, but also giving the support for really needs to get up and going right away as a way to learn to let go without going crazy. The next one is getting along with others. So a lot of people didn't like this one. Nobody wants to get along with people in the new year. I get it, it's hard, and a lot of people like to talk about taking a test-first approach to test automation. I'm telling you to take a people-first approach to this. And this is where I'm going to get a little bit outside of the testing area, but really hone in on what I mean by this. And this is like extremely important you listen to this, because people, I feel like, are only caring about tools and processes and things that are inside their organization, and they're not thinking about people and how to connect with them. So I'm going to give you some examples of how to do this. But figuring out how to work with people in different personality types is going to be key for you to be successful in your Scrum teams, in your COE, wherever you are, talking with leadership, talking with people who are up there. And I'm going to give you an example of how this looks. Usually what happens in a testing organization is your patience, or testing teams and developers, your patience looks like this at the beginning of a Scrum endeavor. Everyone's kind of on even keel. Nobody wants to punch each other in the face. Everyone's very happy with one another. You may even give each other high fives in the office, and you're good to go. Even if you have webcams, you may give like a thumbs up to the webcam, and nobody's mad at each other. But as the development kind of carries along in the development life cycle, you can imagine if you're a ping pong player, you're either the tester or you're a developer, and you're trying to tell somebody if it was a bug or if it wasn't a bug constantly. And what that does is the patience really goes from even keel basically to zero. And I think the reason why this is the case is because people don't care to get to know one another. On the right side, what you're seeing is an actual personality test from your person speaking right now, Ryan Yackel. And if you were looking at this personality test, this is a Myers-Briggs personality test. I am all the way on the left. Like, this is like psycho crazy on the left, all the way to the left when it comes to being ETSJ. Now, the first time I saw that, I was like, you know what? Every year I get this same score, and it reads me like I'm psychotic. And what my friend Jen thought that was really funny. Reed thought that, yeah, that's about right. Amber, you know, she was like, yeah, well. Well, one person had a lot of wisdom, and this is my friend Michael, and he said this. He said, listen, he goes, this just shows how you operate in your preference. And what he meant by that was like, listen, Ryan, it's okay. Like this literally, don't read this as like you're crazy. If you're all the way on the right, all the way on the left, if you had one column to the left, one column to the right, it doesn't mean anything. What it means is just how you operate within your preference. So proper understanding of personality tests, what they help you do is get along with others. An example of this is lots of different personality tests that are out there. There's the Enneagram Institute, there's the DISC assessment, and when you figure out where your personality types are, what's really cool is you'll start to understand how better to communicate when you're talking with somebody who may be, and these are all arbitrary numbers, but somebody who's a type 5 is very different from a type 2. And somebody who's a type 2 may say something, and they may be hearing it like a type 6, but it's actually they're trying to convey something that only a type 4 would understand. That may sound confusing, but that's exactly how people consume and talk, and they don't understand. They don't really get. They don't really understand how the impact of their words have on other people based off different personality types they're interacting with. So this is a very, very important thing. I would really encourage you all to get out of the testing space for a while. Go to your manager and say, listen, there's all these personality tests. We should do a team thing and get us all on the same page. And just like talk through how we communicate with one another. I actually did this with a colleague that I work with. Her name is Lena Norwell. She's a content writer, and we weren't getting along, but we were just kind of like, you know, sometimes we would say things, and sometimes I would take them as like she wants to fight me, and she didn't. She was just talking in a certain way, and so we took these tests, and we actually figured out how to communicate a lot better between us. The next one is focusing on collaboration on 3 levels, and this really goes from API, functional to performance. This is something you've heard 1,000 times before, so I'm not going to get into it a ton. What I am going to get into is the last bullet point, which is performance level testing. From API to functional, a lot of people think that, you know, you go up the pyramid, you say, you know what, yeah, we've got our unit test coverage now. Now we've got a lot of these integration tests going. Then we've got, you know, a subset of these UI tests going, and we're all good, right? That's really API functional levels. A lot of teams forget the performance level part. And the reason why they forget to collaborate on the performance level part is because, and you're probably thinking this right now, sometimes, or most of the time, when you think about performance testing, it's done in isolation, more so than the other 2 that are going on. It's done by a special group. It's done by a special team. It's outsourced. It's, you know, some person that you hired on Upwork. I'm just kidding. You probably wouldn't want to do that if it's performance testing. But really, you have this specialty that's kind of, for some reason, is just pushed off to the specialty expert group. And what I want to tell you all is that you can actually do this a lot better and in Sprint nowadays with a lot of the new tools that are out there. A lot of new tools out there come with this thing called browser level testing. And when it comes to performance testing, a lot of things are really based off of protocol level testing, or API level testing. When you think about Load Runner, you think about Neotis, you think about some of these other tools that are out there, they're very much focused on proprietary protocol level testing and also testing like very heavy applications. However, you can also do the same type of performance testing at the browser level. And what you're able to do is actually take maybe like take a Selenium script or a functional automation script, put it through a complicated test scenario that you would go to on a web or a mobile device, and you can actually then take that and mimic it to be reuse it for an actual load or performance test. So what you're able to do is take something that's been very, very technical in the past, make it something that's accessible for functional test automation engineers to make that a part of their performance level testing. And now what you're able to do is not only collaborate at the API level and functional level, now you're able to bring in performance level testing back into your Scrum team. A very, very important thing as we think about the user experience and user journey, and how testing is adding to that as a part of our teams. Performance has got to be a part of that equation. And the last one is making smarter decisions. So I think a lot of you have probably heard all types of metrics and all types of graphs and all types of different ways to slice testing data. But really it comes down to three things. I'm going to focus on one thing today with a little time that we have left to get to the questions. It all starts with looking at how do you test smarter by tracking the right metrics? That seems like a no-brainer, but it's true. One of the things that I love from one of our board members, his name is Keith Klain. A lot of people may know him. It's out in the testing space nowadays. He comes and speaks all the time at conferences. But one of the things he likes to say is that a lot of times, like tracking and measuring and trying to look for improvements in your testing actually makes you become slower. And what he means by that is you're tracking the wrong things. You're thinking about that this is the right metric. I want to focus on this, and then lo and behold, you have all these metrics that mean absolutely nothing. Design and reporting around KPIs that matter to the business. This is kind of coming full circle here when we talk about all the way from the very beginning, how can you bake in some of that risk-based type testing? How can you bake in the risk analysis at the very beginning to bring in what really matters to the business? So it may matter to the business that you have 80% test automation on a certain application, that may not. Figure out what's really, how you can level up your reporting to these people. And the last one is tracking the high-risk areas. So this is an example of what you'd be looking like in a high-risk area of an application. You can see here on the graph, I've got kind of this requirements test run coverage area. But what you're also seeing is if I need a snapshot of, let's say, all the requirements I've pulled in from or user stories rather, from a particular backlog and into a sprint, I'd want to be able to highlight that very quickly, not in some crazy row graph, super ginormous Excel spreadsheet. I want to quickly be able to know in this particular sprint, when my automation is running or manual tests or exploratory tests, wherever they are, how are they relating back to these requirements and what's the risk associated with those immediately? Right now you can see this RDY-15 user story. It's had 67 test runs and 19 have failed. That's pointing out to me right away because if I look at requirement 1, I've really got 4 test runs and 0 failed. So being able to visualize through heat maps, and you can do this through open source tools, or you can do it through one of our products called Key Test Insights does this as well. But you can really look in the key identify areas of your application where you should be testing or where you should not be testing, maybe in your next regression suite or even in your next Scrum cycle. The other areas is looking at how can you measure and highlight to your business all the defects that you found pre-production that could have had a high cost defect associated with them. One of the things that we don't do enough of, and this is where I think testers, maybe we call it that we're very humble. I don't know, but a lot of times we only get kind of graded on the production defects that were found sprint to sprint. So when we say, we reduce our critical defects from, 70 to 50, that may look good, right? Or it may look bad, depending on where's your measuring stick, right? Or we say, we cleared out all of our sub 1 defects we found and no production leaks got there. But what about all the other defects you found that were crazy high risk and that were crazy severe to the business in pre-production that if they got into production could have had a huge detrimental cost to the business? That's how you track your high risk areas, not just only in production, what's in production, but what is happening in pre-production. How can you tell a team and tell your exec team, look at the value we're giving you all. Look what we're doing in preventing getting out into production. We are extremely necessary and pivotal to this application being well received by our customer base. And guess what? If we hadn't caught these 10 huge defects before production, could have been hugely detrimental to our business. So make sure always highlighting and tracking the areas in pre and post production to make sure that you're conveying that to the business. Okay, so I think we went pretty good here. We've got about 13 minutes, and as we go to the questions here, I will take a sip of coffee because I think I talked a little bit fast, and as you all are just coming in and asking those questions, please feel free to ask any questions, whether it's about the company or it's about kind of what I talked about today, or something you need more clarity on. Go ahead and just start asking and putting those questions into the area. And I think, let me see here. Try to see who's going to ask the questions here. How would you like to, Dave, do you want to ask the questions, or should I just start?
Sure, I could jump in and take care of that, Ryan. So we can get started right away. So one of the questions that came in right away is that you didn't say anything about AI, and this person was curious to know why not.
Yeah, so we've got lots of webinars on AI. The reason why I didn't talk about AI today is AI is a big topic right now, especially if you just Google AI and testing, you'll see things that go from, here's how you do a full-blown test automation suite that has zero touch, and really you buy our tool and it does all the stuff for you, right? The way we see kind of AI being kind of instrumental, at least in our products, and I'm certainly talking about how we've got a lot of our products in today, but the way we see AI really progressing and getting into our business today is more of an AI-enabled versus a pure AI play for testing. And what I mean by that is, are you able to use artificial intelligence to create automated tests? Yes. What's the maturity on that right now? Extremely low. So when it comes to AI testing right now that we have at least baked into our solution is looking at identifying automation tests that are extremely flaky and recommending things you should do with that. So looking at how do you test run over time and what to do with those tests, auto-suggesting ways to go about putting that into your test design or test automation strategy. That's one way to do it. We've got a lot of other AI topics as well, but for this, we just didn't really have time to get to it, but we really see AI as an enabler for test automation versus a complete replacement of it as well. There's a lot of AI developer tools that are out there as well. They're low code, no code when it comes to kind of building out developer blocks for applications. Developers aren't going to be going away anytime either, but they're going to have a lot of AI assisted technology for them to help out.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, another one of our attendees asked the question, is there a way to automate regression testing?
Yeah, so regression testing is just simply running tests that have already been run once to validate your system. So the way to automate regression testing, it's kind of a big, broad question, but the way you go about automating regression testing is figuring out the best, best test to automate, and then figuring out what tools you're going to be needing for that. So, for example, just because I have ran 100 manual tests and now those get put into my regression suite, next time, that doesn't mean I say I need to figure out a way to automate all these 100 manual tests. That's not the way it goes. The way it goes is you say, okay, I've got these regression tests that I've ran. Out of these are my high-risk areas I need to automate. I know it's going to involve test maintenance. It's going to involve test data. It's going to involve environment provisioning. It's going to involve a lot of these things. So what I want to do is optimize that test suite so that when we get into it, we'll be able to automate that. So, this is that's a big question to ask, is a way to automate your regression test, but essentially it's a way to go about doing that. The other thing is that the focus should be on automated regression testing, again, for those high-risk areas, using a risk-based testing approach. Last thing I'll say about this is I mentioned this earlier in the webinar, but I was talking with that gentleman that's over that kind of tech architect over this big automotive company, and he was saying that, again, the directive that the previous person had in his job was automate, 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 and the result was a completely failed automated testing project because there was no strategy, there was no focus on the risk areas of application, there was no focus on maintenance, none of that factored in. And so it's kind of like building a car that is really fast, and then as you're driving the car, somebody pokes a hole in the gas tank and all the gas comes out as soon as you finish the starting line, and you have to replace the gas tank every single time I'm going to go around the track again. That would be an example of a bad automated regression strategy.
I agree with that. So someone followed up with a question. Are you promoting risk-based testing, and how do I get started?
Yeah, so I am a big proponent of risk-based testing. I think a lot of people do risk-based testing even without calling it risk-based testing. It's really prioritizing, and then to me there's a lot of different ways to slice it. But what you're doing is you are, and we help out with this with our solution as well in our risk-based design. But what we do is you would get together in a room with a lot of your team members. You pull in your architects, your developers, your testers, your product owners. What you would do is you'd map out your entire application. You'd map out your business processes. And what you would do is you would rate and rank the areas of your application that are the highest risk. With that in mind, then you would put a score associated with that back to your test cases. And I'm kind of oversimplifying it here, but that's the way you would find out. It's a baseline for where the areas in your application that you really, really, really must focus on. There are showstoppers that you need to really focus on. What are medium, what are low, and what are minor that you don't need to care about. And with that, you're able to then scrub either your existing test suite and map those to the areas where you need to be, or what you would do is you would start new and start a different approach with automating based off of that algorithm that you put together. And so way to do that is if you're using our solution, we've got a way to do that. A lot of I talked a little about kind of our risk-based testing and how it's kind of AI enabled as well, but we've got a solution for that. But you can also kind of do this on your own. If you wanted to, for example, put in some values to certain fields on requirements and have those auto-populate to certain test cases, you can hack together something that would do that. It's not going to be, I would say it's not going to be as resilient as our solution, but you can definitely go off and at least try it in that prioritization to even see if it would be something you want to do. Because the thing you're going to have to do is you're going to have to establish a baseline, and your team is going to have to help you figure that out. It's not this siloed event that as a tester I go in and say, this is my high risk area of application, I'm done. You need to really focus on who's going to be doing that.
Excellent. So the next question is, can you tell me how Tricentis helps with test maintenance? Yeah, so as a super high level view, the way we do it is we have a solution that's built around this thing called model-based test automation. And the core of it is that what we're able to do is, if you have an application, we're able to separate the logic layer, the technical layer, into a logic layer that's single points of maintenance for your testing. So, for example, if you have technical artifacts ABC on a web page, and we model the ABC into more of a test design area, if that area of the application changes, we can make one change to that, and it's going to update across all of our tests. And so it's really a single point of maintenance when it comes to your ability to do that. That's really kind of that built-in framework that we have. And then when it comes to the other maintenance that's on top of that, we also we've built in test data management and service virtualization to make it more and more resilient as you think about not only how can I maintain the objects and maintain the abstraction layer that's a part of the application I'm testing, but then how do I inject data, and how do I always test and make sure that I'm able to test another system even when it's not maybe online or available. Very good. All right, we're coming up on the hour. We do have time for another question or two. I just want to remind everybody that this webinar will be available on demand on the SD Times website starting in the next day or so. So you can replay this because Ryan talks really fast. And this way you'll be able to get it all over and over again. Okay, Ryan, the next question would be, what if my performance testing is done by a center of excellence? How would you address getting performance testing into Scrum teams? Yeah, so the quick way I would say is like really fast, I would say is that if the performance testing you're doing is something that can be done
in a cloud environment. So let's say you're testing a website, testing a mobile application, you're testing something that's not something that needs to be kind of behind your own servers or an on-premise solution. What I would do is I would go to that team and say, listen, your team is really specialized and focused on a lot of their automation testing or all the performance testing on these protocol levels that, quite honestly, you guys are really good at, right? And keep doing that. However, I'm sure you're getting a ton of requests to do a lot of this cloud testing or performance testing against cloud applications. Let us take that under control. Let us take that from you, and let us use more solutions like that. Or let us use a solution for distributed load testing in the cloud, and allow you to focus more on those areas. Because quite honestly, if people are doing the testing in the COE, they may be doing a lot of performance testing, a lot of performance requests that really can be done by the Scrum team, but they're just using tools that are in both arenas. So use a tool that's going to be good for cloud-based testing. We have a solution called Flood that does that, and allow them to keep doing more of that protocol level testing kind of in that COE. So that's what I would say as a way to go about doing it and approaching it, to where you say, you guys specialize here, that's great, keep doing that. Let us lighten your load and let us take on a lot of the cloud stuff.
Great. I think we have time for one more question, and the question would be, so what Enneagram type are you?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so I'm a lot of Enneagram people out there, hopefully. It's good, it's cool tool. I'm actually a type 6, which means that I talk really fast. That's not what a type 6 means. No, a type 6 means that they are, one of the key things is they're very loyal. So, if you talk bad about me or talk bad about my friends, I guess I get really sad about that. I'm not sure. But yeah, I'm a type 6, so look it up. And if you go, wait, that guy was really weird and really crazy. Well, I don't think all type 6s are like this, though.
Well, that was great. Ryan, I'd like to thank you for your presentation today. And of course, I'd like to thank Tricentis for sponsoring the webinar. And of course, I'd like to thank all of our attendees for spending some time with us today. So until next time, I'm Dave Rubenstein. So long for now.